All right, there you have it on the issue of presidential immunity. And let's talk about that key point. Supreme Court held a hearing today. We have Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, and we have Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and now co-chair of the AFPI Law and Justice Center. Thanks for coming on, both of you. Pam, I know you followed this. You filed an amicus brief, AFPI. What was your read of the hearing on immunity at the Supremes today?
I think it went great for President Trump, Larry. The questions were great by the justices, and I think really the worst case scenario for President Trump, which is good, is they're going to find that there is immunity, and they're going to remand it back to the lower courts to make a determination which instances were immune and which were not, which were official acts and which were him as a private citizen. So I think most likely that's what will happen. Of course, they could rule complete immunity and dismiss the case, or they could rule he has no immunity at all. But given the questions today, I believe that's what's going to happen, and that will take months and months and months of hearings before it actually gets to trial.
Gregg Jarrett, A, give us your read if you agree with Pam Bondi or not, and B, the issue as I understand it, non-lawyer that I am, Nixon versus Fitzgerald gave presidential immunity in civil cases, but this one is a criminal case. But many people think that the criminal case should be included in presidential immunity, or whatever the term is, the outer limits of immunity, because otherwise presidents are not going to be able to operate as presidents, because they may all either go to jail or be in court after they leave the White House, as they're doing to Trump. What's your read, Gregg Jarrett?
Yeah, it appears most justices are willing to grant some kind of immunity, Larry. They spoke, as you point out, a great deal about Nixon v. Fitzgerald, a 1982 case that did give presidents immunity from civil lawsuits as long as their actions fall, quote, on the outer perimeter of official duties. So I think it's quite possible the High Court will simply extend that immunity protection to criminal prosecutions, because the exact same reasoning applies. If there's no immunity whatsoever, my goodness, the chilling effect on presidential decision-making would be severe. So if they go that way, Pam's right. They have to remand the case back to the trial court to decide whether those limited immunity conditions were met by Trump in the J6 case. They could also simply say, you know, there should be some kind of immunity for presidents. We're going to send it back to the lower court to figure it out. We'll give you a little bit of guidance to do that. But either way, the process will be time-consuming, briefs, court hearings, a further appeal. So that makes it impossible that a trial could take place before the election.
Right. So no layup for the special prosecutor. Pam Bondi, you know, Wall Street Journal ran an op-ed piece today. Rifkin, somebody else. Abe Lincoln would have been thrown in jail, because after all, he suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. That was really against the law, or Congress didn't approve it. Harry Truman took over the steel mills in a labor dispute. I opposed that, but he would have been thrown in jail. And then various presidents, I think they mentioned both Bushes and Obama, would have been thrown in jail because they might have violated some interpretation of the War Powers Act when they were trying to stop Russia. You say, and that's Trump's logic. You can't be president if you have to look over your shoulder about going to jail or courts or whatever after you leave. I mean, that's been his logic from day one, Pam.
Right, Larry, it would be an endless cycle of former presidents being prosecuted. They would just become figureheads. They wouldn't be able to do their job. One of the leftist arguments in this was that President Trump could have ordered SEAL Team 6. He could order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his political opponent. And that was what we wrote in our friend of the court brief, that of course he can't do that. And Justice Alito used the same language we used in our brief to say, first of all, the president couldn't do that. That would be illegal. And the Navy SEALs wouldn't do that because they would know it's illegal. So that's how ludicrous the left's argument has become. And yeah, I firmly believe President Trump will prevail in this immunity case.
But your key point, Greg, I mean, both of you, I think, are saying the same thing. This is no, you know, there's no 24-second clock here. There's no 10 seconds over the half-court line. This is not going to happen right away. This is going to be a long, drawn-out process. The Supremes, when will the Supremes make a decision to remand if they do that, Greg? Can you take a guess?
Well, judging by what Neil Gorsuch said today, that this is a decision for the ages. You know, he and the other justices, I think, really appreciate the gravity of what is before them. And I think they are going to take their time. This isn't, to them, I don't think this is really about Trump. This is about future presidents for generations. And I love your point about Lincoln. Yes, he would have been thrown in jail. I think you advised him not to suspend habeas corpus. I think you advised John Adams not to sign the Sedition Act, if I recall correctly.
No, I told Harry Truman, don't take over the steel mills. That's not free market capitalism. And he went ahead and did it anyway. But nobody threw him in jail or court. That's the point.
Right. You know what was important today? Brett Kavanaugh said, what is to stop a creative prosecutor from using a vague statute to criminally charge a president, especially a prosecutor from the opposing party? Well, that pretty much defines all 4 indictments against Donald Trump, particularly the criminal case that is so absurd being brought by Alvin Bragg right now in Manhattan.
Pam Bondi, got a minute left. First of all, you won't come to New York. You've got to come to New York for this crazy Alvin Bragg trial. But here's the latest. Alvin Bragg and it's got this guy, what's his name, Calendar, who was Calendro, was the number 3 guy in the Justice Department, which I think links him to Biden, but that's a separate subject. But Pam, what they're saying now is a misdemeanor plus a misdemeanor equals a felony. They've been trying to find a felony here the whole time. They cannot find a federal felony. So they decided 2 New York State misdemeanors where there's no laws been broken. I mean, they're so obscure, equals a felony. I mean, I think this is just nuttier than Harry Truman taking over the steel mills.
Larry, it is. And you know, it's been very clear that the Department of Justice initially declined to prosecute this case. The Southern District of New York declined to prosecute this case. The statute of limitations has long run on this case. Therefore, they had to join misdemeanors together, turn them into 34 felonies to attempt to even be within the time frame to go after President Trump. And, you know, Jack Smith is trying to push this case. They're all trying to push these cases. Alvin Bragg is trying to push his case. They all want to push these cases because they want him in trial like he's in trial today. He couldn't be sitting in front of the Supreme Court today. That's where he should have been today, listening to those oral arguments, but he couldn't be there because they're trying to rush everything to have him tied up, which is the ultimate election interference.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Pam Bondi, thank you. Gregg Jarrett, thank you ever so much.